Welcome to week 4 of English 102. In this week's class, we're going to be giving our attention to clauses. Now, last week we looked at various kinds of phrases. And you'll remember a phrase is a combination of words that do not contain both subject and a verb. Well, in clauses, we're going to see that they do indeed contain both a subject and a verb. Clause is a group of words with both a subject and a predicate, and clauses are either independent clauses or dependent clauses. So, again, a clause is a group of words that has subject plus a predicate. Now, what's the distinction between independent clauses and dependent clauses? Well, before we get into that, let's look at the different types of clauses that we will give consideration to in this week's study. We're going to consider independent clauses, dependent clauses, and the dependent clauses will either serve as an adverb clause or an adjective clause. Then we're going to give consideration to noun clauses, and finally to elliptical clauses. Let's begin by thinking about independent clauses. An independent clause contains both a subject and a predicate and can stand alone as a sentence because it makes a complete thought. So in these three examples, we see both a subject and a predicate. Timothy caught the ball. Brenda went to the store. Freddie wanted to see the man. So we have a subject in each and we have a predicate. Now remember, a predicate it contains both the verb and all of its modifiers. So the entire phrase, caught the ball, is the predicate. Caught would be the simple predicate or the verb, and the entire phrase, caught the ball, would be the predicate of the sentence. Now, a dependent clause, in contradistinction to the independent clause, contains both the subject and a predicate, but it can't stand alone as a sentence because it doesn't make a complete thought. That the batter hit out of the ballpark. Well, we've got a subject, that the batter, and we've got the predicate, hit the ball out of the ballpark. After she dropped the kids off at school, we've got a subject, she, and we've got the predicate, dropped the kids off at school. Who had sold him the used car? Well, again, we have a subject, who, and a predicate, had sold him the used car. But none of these, even though they contain a subject and a predicate, make a complete thought. So these are dependent clauses. They're dependent on something else to make a complete thought, thereby making a complete sentence. But now let's combine the independent clauses and the dependent clauses. We saw that Timothy hit the ball was an independent clause. It is a complete thought, so it is a sentence. But then we can add the dependent clause that the batter hit out of the ballpark, and we have an independent clause combined with a dependent clause. The dependent clause now is modifying the independent clause. Timothy caught the ball that the batter hit out of the ballpark. So the word that goes along with ball. Now, Brenda went to the store. Again, that's a complete sentence. We add the dependent clause after she dropped the kids off at school, and it modifies or gives further explanation to the independent clause. Freddie wanted to see the man. Well, what man? Well, the man who sold him the used car. So now we've got a combination of an independent clause and a dependent clause, and they make a complete thought. The dependent clause modifying or giving explanation to the independent clause. Now these dependent clauses will serve either as an adjective or an adverb in the sentence. An adjective is going to modify nouns and pronouns. and an adverb is going to modify verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. So again, let's look at these three sentences and determine what type of dependent clause these are. Well, in the first sentence, Timothy caught the ball that the batter hit out of the ballpark. So the word that is modifying the verb or the word ball. Which ball? Well, the ball that the batter hit out of the ballpark. So in this sentence, it's an adjective. Now, Brenda went to the store after she dropped the kids off at school. In this sentence, the word after, which begins the dependent clause, modifies the verb went. When did she go to the store? After she dropped the kids off at school. So this sentence, the dependent clause, serves as an adverb. Freddie wanted to see the man who had sold him the used car. Who is a relative pronoun, and it is modifying or explaining the man. It's telling us what man. So, Freddie wanted to see the man who sold him the used car. So again, this dependent clause is serving as an adjective clause in this sentence. Let's think now about adverb clauses. An adverb clause starts with a subordinating conjunction. A subordinating conjunction is such words as although, because, when, or until. An adverb clauses usually answer a question about the independent clause, such as how, why, or when. Timothy felt ill when he heard the news about the accident. So the verb is felt. He felt ill. And the dependent clause, when he heard the news about the accident, tells us when he felt ill. So it is an adverb clause giving explanation to or modifying the verb felt. If he had realized the cost, he would not have made the deal. He would not have made the deal if he had realized the cost. So if he had realized the cost is modifying the verb would have, and would have here is then also modified by the word not. So he would not have made the deal if he had realized the costs. Because Freddie had seen the news, he already knew the awful story. He already knew the awful story because Freddie had seen the news. So, knowing the awful story is modified by the dependent clause because Freddie had seen the news. So again, it is serving as an adverb clause. Now make special note, when an adverb clause comes before an independent clause, you separate the clauses with a comma. So again, looking at our three examples at the bottom of the screen, Timothy felt ill when he heard the news about the accident. There's no comma there because the adverb clause comes after the independent clause. But the other two, if he had realized the costs, he would not have made the deal. We do insert a comma because the adverb clause comes after, or rather before, the independent clause. And we see the same thing with the last sentence. Because Freddie had seen the news, he already knew the awful story. So when an adverb clause comes before an independent clause, we will separate the clauses with a comma. Adjective clauses. Adjective clause, and it's also called a relative clause because it starts with a relative pronoun such as who, which, or that, or a relative adverb such as when or where. So an adjective clause modifies the noun or pronoun that it follows. Timothy caught the ball that was hit out of the ballpark. In this sentence, we've got the word ball, which is a noun. It's followed by a relative pronoun, that. So we have an adjective clause. It begins with the relative pronoun, and it gives explanation to that. So Timothy caught the ball. Which ball? The ball that was hit out of the ballpark. That which was hit out of the ballpark. A relative pronoun. Adjective clauses, again, are going to begin with pronouns who, whom, whose, which, or that. Think of it as a clause that's related to the noun it modifies. Timothy caught the ball, that. Freddie wanted to see the man, who. That and who are both relative pronouns referring back to the nouns ball and man. Now we'll give our attention to noun clauses. Noun clauses function as nouns in a sentence, and they can begin with many of the same words that begin adjective clauses. For example, that, who, which, and their derivatives, as well as when, where, whether, why, and how. Noun clauses and adjective clauses are sometimes confused with each other. Now remember that the word starting an adjective clause has a noun or pronoun that it relates to, but the word starting a noun clause doesn't. Now let me repeat that sentence. The word starting an adjective clause has a noun or pronoun that it relates to, but the word starting a noun clause does not. Whoever broke the lamp must pay for it. Tom realized that he was worrying too much. Now in the first sentence, the noun clause is whoever broke the lamp. And in this sentence, it's serving as the subject of the sentence, the entire noun clause. Whoever broke the lamp. That's the subject. Whoever broke the lamp must pay for it. Tom realized that he was worrying too much. The noun clause in this sentence is that he was worrying too much, and in this sentence, the noun clause is serving as the direct object. Tom realized what? What did he realize? That he was worrying too much. So in this sentence, it's a noun clause serving as the direct object. A noun clause, leaders know how to delegate responsibility, and an adjective clause, teachers who love their students enjoy watching them grow. Now, how do we determine, again, the difference between a noun clause and an adjective clause? Well, again, look at the first sentence. Leaders know how to delegate responsibility. The noun clause in this sentence is how to delegate responsibility, and it serves as the direct object in this sentence, giving explanation to leaders know what. Leaders know how to delegate responsibility. Now in the second sentence, we have an adjective clause. Teachers who love their students enjoy watching them grow. In this sentence, the adjective clause begins with the relative pronoun who. Teachers who love their students enjoy watching them grow. So we have an adjective clause modifying the subject of the sentence, teachers. There are some rules for noun clauses that we need to remember. Number one, a noun clause generally goes after the verb, but if the clause is the subject of the sentence, it actually may begin the sentence, as we have seen in previous examples. Secondly, a noun clause may function in a sentence any way that a noun functions. It can be the subject, the direct object, or the object of the preposition. So a noun clause can serve in any way that a noun would normally function in a sentence. Thirdly, noun clauses are usually introduced by the word that, but they may also be introduced by what, which, who, whom, where, when, whoever, and whatever. We're going to give our attention now to the last category, which is elliptical clauses. And an elliptical clause is in a category pretty much by itself. Elliptical clause omits one or more words from a clause that are easily inferred from the context of the sentence. Now that may sound a little bit confusing, so let's look at some examples to try to understand what we're talking about here by way of elliptical clauses. In this sentence, the runners, though exhausted, completed the race. We have an elliptical clause. The runners, though they were exhausted, completed the race. So we see here that this elliptical clause, though exhausted, omits one or more words that are understood or inferred from the context of this sentence. The runners, though they were exhausted, completed the race. So the words "they were" are omitted from it, and we're left with the runners, though exhausted, completed the race. He enjoys playing tennis more than basketball. So again, we have an elliptical clause. He enjoys playing tennis more than he enjoys basketball. So the words "he enjoys" are omitted from this phrase, and the sentence still makes complete sense even though those words are inferred in this context. Let's look at a few sentences and just try to pick out the elliptical clauses. Unless they are frightened of clowns, children generally enjoy circuses. While you are turning off the lights, check the doors too. I usually listen to the radio while I am studying. Do you like chocolate as much as you like vanilla? All right, before I show them, try to determine what the elliptical clause is in these sentences. First of all, the first sentence, unless they're frightened of clowns, children generally enjoy circuses. Can you see the elliptical clause? Easily strike the words "they are." Unless frightened of clowns, children generally enjoy circuses. So the elliptical clause is the words "they are." They can easily be omitted even though they're clearly inferred in the sentence. All right, the second sentence, while you are turning off the lights, check the doors too. Can you pinpoint the elliptical clause? In this sentence, it's the words "you are." Those words can easily be omitted and the sentence still makes perfectly good sense. While turning off the lights, check the doors too. And the words "you are" clearly understood or clearly inferred in the sentence, but can easily be taken out of the sentence. I usually listen to the radio while I am studying. Again, can you pinpoint the elliptical clause? It's the words "I am." "I am" can easily be omitted and they are clearly inferred, but we don't have to say the words. I usually listen to the radio while studying. And then finally, do you like chocolate as much as you like vanilla? Once again, can you pinpoint the elliptical clause? Well, in this sentence, the words "you like" can easily be omitted and yet still be clearly inferred. Do you like chocolate as much as vanilla? And the words "you like" are clearly inferred. Do you like chocolate as much as you like vanilla? But the words are unnecessary for the sentence to make perfectly good sense. Now remember, clauses contain a subject and a predicate. All clauses contain a subject and a predicate, which sets them apart from phrases which do not contain both a subject and a predicate. Clauses come in different types, different categories. An independent clause is a clause that can stand alone as a sentence. It doesn't need anything else to complete the thought. Whereas a dependent clause cannot stand alone as a sentence, but even though it contains a subject and a predicate, it does not complete a thought. So, dependent clauses will serve as either adverb clauses or adjective clauses. If it's an adverb clause, it's going to serve the same purpose as an adverb. It will modify verbs, adjectives, or adverbs. If it's an adjective clause, it's going to modify nouns and pronouns. Then we gave consideration to noun clauses, and noun clauses can serve any purpose or any role in a sentence as a regular noun would serve. And then we gave consideration to elliptical clauses. At this point, you're ready to take this week's quiz. And once again, just by way of reminder, you can refer to any notes you've taken. You can refer to your textbook. But remember, you will only have one attempt at the quiz. And once you begin the quiz, you have 1 hour to complete it. So again, be sure that you are giving yourself enough time. Also, on week 5, we will give our attention to our midterm exam. Now, our midterm exam will be the only thing that you will be required to do on week 5. So what I encourage all of you to do is to take plenty of time to go back over all 4 weeks, perhaps go back and re-listen to all of the videos. Make notes as you do that, because when you take your midterm exam, you will be allowed to use any notes that you have, but you will only have 1 attempt at the midterm exam, as you have had 1 attempt at all of the quizzes. The difference being you will have 50 questions on the midterm exam rather than the 20 you've been having on the quizzes. And also you will have 2 hours to complete the midterm exam, whereas you've only had 1 hour to complete the 20 question quizzes. But again, I will say you will only have a 1 attempt at the midterm exam. Once you start it, you will have 2 hours to complete it. So make sure you've got 2 hours carved out with no distractions or disturbances so you can give your full attention to the midterm exam. God bless you in your studies this week, and I will look forward to spending some time with you next week, looking over your exams, and hopefully you will all do well on them. As long as you've studied and gone back over your notes for weeks 1 through 4, I feel sure that you will all do quite well on your midterm exam. Until then, have a great week, and I'll see you next week.